Hey guys, welcome to GCT, where I read out the best stories on Reddit, so you don't have to. The funny, shocking, and satisfyingly juicy. Today is Antiwork Monday, with a few stories that will help you get through the week. I need a doctor's note to work from home for more than 2 days, while I have an unidentified, presumably contagious illness. If you insist. Our first post comes from Malicious Compliance subreddit. Posted by Lulu Ginger Spice. It's a tale as old as capitalism. My job, which, to be fair, I freaking adore working at, and I'm so grateful for and happy at, requires a doctor's note because I've been sick and working from home for 2 days. Now, I haven't just had a minor cold or flu. Several days ago, I came down with the worst cold and flu symptoms you can imagine. And then things started going downhill from there. It got to the point where I've now been in the ER 2 days in a row because of tonsillitis and excruciating pain brought on by swallowing tiny sips of water. It's not great. And despite a whole battery of swabs and tests, the doctors don't know what the underlying bacteria or virus causing these symptoms is. Ah well, better spread this unknown disease through the office then. Obviously, there's no way in hell I want to infect my coworkers with this plague. So, I told HR I'd be working from home until I'm feeling better, since my job can be done 100% remotely. They hit me back with the ever-famous, if you need to work from home for more than 2 days in a week, you'll need a doctor's note, since it's against policy. My first instinct was to just go into work looking, sounding, and feeling like death warmed up. But A, I don't want to infect my colleagues, and B, I legitimately believed I would pass out on my way to work and would have to be taken to the hospital again. Instead, I spoke to the ER doctor from earlier this evening, my second visit in as many days. I asked him how long he thought I should stay away from work and work from home. And then I told him I needed a note so I could stay home. He had a brief flash of vaguely furious "what the F" cross his face at the idea that my job would force someone as sick as I am to come in and risk the health of those around me. He then assured me he would write me the note. I was thinking it'd just be the basic, Lulu Ginger Spice should continue to work from home until the end of the week. Nah, bro came through for me. He wrote a note saying that I should be off work, at minimum, another week. Then added the piece de resistance as his last line. Infectious disease requires more time than 2 days to improve. Yeah, particularly unknown ones. I can totally see a zombie movie starting this way. Some dude comes down with this unknown infectious disease, and his boss is like, I don't care if your flesh is rotting away. Come into the office. The only time I've ever heard of someone getting in trouble for doing more than required. And our next post is from the Malicious Compliance subreddit, posted by HunterDRF. Many years ago, I worked at a company that manufactured scientific and medical testing machines. Think shakers and small centrifuges. I originally started there as a machinist until I hurt my knee at work. 8 years and 5 surgeries later, and it's still not fixed. After my injury, I switched over to the assembly side because that was more accommodating for my new limitations. Long story short, I was very good at my job, coming up with new ways to streamline several processes, new ways to assemble various things quicker than before, generally doing more work than my job description called for, and even having the temerity to prove the engineers wrong on multiple occasions. With everything I could do, I knew it would require the company to hire at least 3 people to replace me should I leave. It was announced one day that the assembly manager, AM, was leaving that job, and anyone who was interested could apply for it, with a promise that the inside personnel would have an inside track over outside applicants. I put together my resume and went for it. The son-in-law of the company's owner was doing the interviews, which I aced. He went so far as to tell me my resume was by far the most professional and complete he'd ever seen. But I didn't get the job. No hard feelings, I just went back to doing what I had been doing. Well, as it turned out, they hired a friend of the owner's son-in-law as the new AM. So much for that inside track, huh? It seemed to me, as well as my co-workers, that we weren't even at the same race course, but whatever, I could deal with it. I don't know what that guy's previous work experience was, but it became abundantly clear very early on that he was out of his depth. He had no clue why or how things were done the way they were, but decided a couple of weeks after his hiring that he was going to change everything about the assembly area. Well, it is the new manager motto, if it ain't broke, break it. One of the things he decided was that we were no longer allowed to exceed the number of machines assembled per day, nor were we permitted to skip over machines to get to others, regardless of the issue. Engineering issues, bad parts, wrong parts from the warehouse, etc. Some of those parts came from the machine shop side, but many came from outside companies too. But we also weren't allowed to stand around waiting for the new parts from the warehouse. We couldn't even get with the warehouse personnel to help find parts we needed or help them get the parts into our assembly area. No more doing more became our new mantra. Productivity and quality plummeted. Needless to say, none of the assembly team were happy in the slightest. I tried, I really did, but I have issues with not doing things to the best of my ability. I also have issues with not being able to fill my workday with work. You know, what I'm being paid to do? I would be the absolute worst person to ask about quiet quitting. A few months into the AM's tenure, my station was at a standstill due to an engineering problem with a new variant of machine that I could practically build blindfolded. I had 4 to 5 college-educated engineers crowding my station, attempting to figure out a problem that arose only after the machine was fully assembled, which I explained exactly how it could be fixed with minimal effort. And by the way, I was correct, but that's a different story. While waiting for the engineers to come to the same conclusion as me, which they did, eventually, I went to the warehouse man responsible for pulling the parts that I needed to assemble and asked him to switch over to a different machine that I was going to build. The AM happened to wander over just then and asked what I was doing. I explained the situation with the engineers and that I was currently unable to work on those machines, and rather than standing around looking lazy, I was trying to get a jump start on the other machines that I needed to build that day. At no point did I get sarcastic, which is my normal mode of communication, nor was I flippant in any way. I was merely trying to get some work done that we both knew needed to get done. He started loudly berating me in front of the entire shop, specifically saying, "You're not allowed to do more than I tell you to do, in the order I tell you to do it." I placated him as best as I could, and went back to my work area, which was still overrun with engineers, and settled down for a long wait. Cue Malicious Compliance. I didn't work on another machine for the rest of the day. Not because I didn't want to, but because I was told I wasn't allowed. A couple of hours later, I was called into the AM's office for a meeting. I was expecting another stern talking to, which I could handle. Being ex-military, I'd grown accustomed to being chewed out by people who didn't really know how to do the job I was doing. What I was not accustomed to was getting a write-up for trying to do my job, especially since the official reason was insubordination. The AM didn't even have the courage to do it himself. He foisted it off to my immediate supervisor, who wasn't involved in the prior situation and had no idea what had happened earlier. I think he was busy putting out a different fire. He asked what happened that justified my first and only write-up in 2.5 years that I'd worked for the company. When I explained it to my supervisor, all he could do was shake his head in disbelief. He was a good supervisor, at least when it came to getting the best out of most people. But he also wasn't really known for rocking the boat to stick up for his people. That being said, when he tried to get me to sign it, I refused because I obviously disagreed. He said he understood, but he'd have to talk to AM about it. That did not go well. I could hear the yelling half a building away, despite the machinery running. Once again, I was called to the AM's office, but this time I was facing AM. He immediately started yelling at me again, but not just for the earlier incident. Now he wanted to know why I hadn't built the day's allotment of machines. I coolly reminded him that not only was there an engineering problem with the machines I was supposed to build, he told me not to work on any other machines, and to do so was insubordination, as he so callously put in the write-up. He then asked me if I was going to sign the write-up. Once again, I refused. I don't think it's right or fair to be reprimanded for doing my job. If you don't like it, he said through clenched teeth, find another job. I can find 1,000 people who can do that job. I never said otherwise, a-hole. I was fed up by now. I refused to tamp down my anger any longer. But you will need at least 3 people to do everything that I can do easily and as well as I can. Good luck with that. I left him standing there, completely flustered, and went back to my work area to gather my personal effects and walked over to my supervisor. I informed him I was going home and I'd like to use my accrued paid time off and vacation time for the next 2 weeks. He told me it wasn't a problem and he was approving my request. I let him know that I was also giving my 2 weeks notice and I wouldn't be back. He shook my hand and wished me well in my future endeavours. I did the same and left. I got to leave on my terms and, through my son, who also worked there, as well as various friends I'd made while working there, I learned that the company had to hire no less than 5 people to replace me and my expertise. I also got the last laugh because I'm pretty sure AM got fired a couple of years later for various reasons, not the least of which was the lagging productivity and his driving a mass exodus of the best personnel in the assembly area. I'm betting you weren't being paid the equivalent of 5 people's salary. Man, they had a bargain with you. Remember, they need you more than you need them. I post new content every day, so subscribe for more juicy tea.